Thank you. Our next speaker, by the way, encouraged me not to talk about his furry companion. Of course, that meant that I had to tell. He had a dog named Sabbath. And if you know anything about Christian's background, it makes sense that he would have a dog named Sabbath. But he admitted to me that it was really named Black Sabbath after the heavy metal band, but it was politically incorrect, so he dropped the black. Our next speaker will be speaking from the Advanced Communication Manual, The Entertaining Speaker. He is working on project number 2, Resources for Entertainment. In this project, the objective is to draw upon resources outside of yourself and adapt them into your own narrative. The speech is from 5 to 7 minutes. Upon completion of the speech, our speaker will have achieved the next level of award after Competent Communicator, the award of Advanced Communicator Bronze. For those of you that are new to Toastmasters and our guest today, that is quite an achievement. So let's give him a round of applause even before we get there. Assuming he doesn't die of a heart attack before he's finished. The stories you are about to hear are mostly true. The facts have been changed to protect the wittiness. Enlightening Relationships. Art Christian Minson. Art Christian Minson, Enlightening Relationships.
With regards to relationships, have you ever wondered what is the most enlightening approach? Well, the obvious answer to me is that approach would be informed by your spiritual path, which is why, for me, the church has always had a very strong influence in the way I conduct my relational activities. However, perhaps not in a manner you might expect. For instance, when I was a teenager, I was there in confessional. I started by saying, "Father, forgive me, for I have sinned. I've been with a loose girl." Father said, "Oh my, a loose girl. It must have been Mary Thompson." I said, "I prefer not to say, Father." He said, "Oh, then was it little Jenny Stevens?" I said, "Please, Father, I will not answer." He said, "Okay, it must have been Betsy Miller then." I said, "Father, please, for the 3rd time, I'm not going to tell you who it was." He said, "Oh, okay. But was it Shannon Williams?" I said, "Father," he said, "Oh, okay, son. Your allegiance to your confidentiality is quite admirable. But you must atone for your behavior. So as penance for your actions, you may not be an altar boy for 3 months. Now run along." So I went back to my seat in the church pews where my buddy was waiting for me. When I sat down, he said, "What did he give you? What was your punishment?" I looked at him and smiled and I said, 3 months vacation and 4 great leads. Now my buddy thought I hit the jackpot. But in a moment of temporary enlightenment, I saw beyond my temporary bounty to the goose that laid the golden egg. After all, I reasoned, if the priest had access to this kind of inside information, then the real action happened inside the monastery. So I made plans in a giddy state to join a monastic order. Well, my giddiness soon wore off as I woke up in an enlightenment hangover, realizing that I had signed away on 3 important vows: simplicity, obedience, and celibacy. Well, for the next 10 lonely years, I lived the life of a monastic. My duties were to transcribe the ancient texts as they got too old and brittle, we had to write them out by hand and create a new copy. Now, I was always of the personal opinion that this left a lot of margin for error. And my suspicions were confirmed one night as I was about to leave. It was time for our evening meditations, and I looked all around for my superior. He was nowhere to be found. Then I heard this faint whimpering sound coming from the catacombs where we retired all of the ancient texts. So as I walked down the steps and rounded the corner, there I saw the elder monk slumped over one of the most ancient of the texts, crying inconsolably. I ran over to him. I said, "Superior, Superior, what's wrong?" All he could do was say, "They forgot the R." I said, "They forgot the R? What are you talking about?" He said, "The word, it's not celibate, it's celebrate." Then I started crying. Well, I took this as my divinely ordained cue to exit the lonely monastic life and return to the world where I could catch up on my celebrating. So as not to waste any time, the first girl that I met, I asked to marry me. So she took me to her father, and he gave me the 3-question interview. "Well, son, you got any money?" Well, being that I was just out of the monastery and a little short on cash, but long on faith, I said, "God will provide." He looked and said, "Well, how about a job? You got a job?" Again, I didn't have one, so I said, "God will provide." He grimaced and said, "Well, I don't suppose you got a plan, do you, son?" Again, in my most idealistic tone, I said, "God will provide." Well, that must have been all he needed to hear, because he left quickly back into the kitchen where I saw his wife was listening in. She said, "What did he say? What did he say?" I said, "Well, he ain't got no money, no job, no plan. But I guess the good news is he thinks I'm God." So pretty soon, God was telling me to get out. So I got out, and here I am. Well, if there's any value to my checkered relational history, it's to pass on these important lessons. Number 1, never underestimate the value of a priest's advice. Number 2, before you sign any soul-binding contract, make sure there's no spelling mistakes. And number 3, God will provide, but in-laws are often a lot more stingy. But most of all, the most important lesson, no matter what zealously misguided path you find yourself on with regards to relationships, if you're looking for the most enlightened approach, always remember, keep it light.